All right, welcome to the January 6th, 2022 edition of the Java Operators meeting. Happy New Year, everyone. I hope everyone had a nice break and is ready to start. Let me share my screen here. See what's on the agenda today. Find the right tab, this one. All right, let's see. What do we have here? Anything? Okay, any new faces today? Let's see. I don't think so. No. Same old folks. No, I'm just kidding. It's wonderful to see everyone. Okay, no new faces. All right. Austin says, would this group benefit from a pulp maven operator?
So I've been attending some meetings for a group of people who have been working with Pulp on Operate First, and they're basically just hardening the Pulp Python plugin operator so that it just works, so that if you're deploying anything to Operate First, which is running on OpenShift, then you can basically get a free PyPI mirror. And so they've finishing up that, and they're looking at their next project, and it looked like maybe Java and Maven was the next one. So I mentioned y'all. Is this something that would be interested for you?
Actually, sorry, but I didn't understand almost anything you said. Not because I didn't hear, but because I don't have the context. I have no idea what pulp is.
Yeah, okay, cool.
And I'm not too sure about Operate First either. So
let me start over. Operate First is a Red Hat initiative to make certain things available, certain operators available and hardened. So there's more to it than that, but I'm just scratching the surface. Pulp is a content manager, and you have different Pulp plugins that manage different types of content. So there's Pulp RPM, Pulp Container, Pulp Python, Pulp Maven. So this would basically allow a Maven clone. So you could mirror a Maven repository, curate your own repositories, version them, etc. Promote through life cycles, that type of thing. So if having your own Maven basically running on your cluster is something that would be useful to anyone in this group, then I can pass that information along to them and see if we can get you connected.
So like a Maven repo?
Yes, exactly. But you can have as many repos as you want.
Yes. Sorry, I still don't understand what the value, what it brings.
Okay, so let's say that you mirrored a Maven repository, you set it up as a pull through cache and just have it running locally in your cluster. And anytime you're trying to install any jars, then it's going to pull from your cluster rather than the external repository. But you can also push your own jars up there. So you could have a newer version that's not been published yet, or you can curate exactly the versions that you want, whatever.
But I guess that's more targeted to S2I users, right? Though.
Yes.
That's for people who, I could see where that would be useful for people who are doing builds on the clusters, right? But from an operator's perspective, I'm not too sure about, well, I guess unless the operator is doing builds as well as part of its operations, I guess. But strictly from a pure operator perspective, I'm not sure. That's definitely interesting, but yeah.
Would any of these users be deploying their operator such that they would need the Java SDK?
Yeah. So, well, oh, okay. I see.
I mean, I guess what I'm going for it. So from what I understood, it sounds more like a pulp based Maven repo in a cluster that you can have more control over. And if that's the case, well, I think if that's one of the cases, I could see for us having the Java operator SDK project being in that repo as a delivery mechanism for them. I'd like to know more about it. I mean, it sounds like an interesting initiative. Is that the right link? I kind of just did a quick Google and found operate first.
Yeah.
And added it to the link.
I was actually just curious, is Pulp how the Maven, I know Maven repositories are delivered, to the build pipeline via some mechanism. I was wondering if Pulp is actually that mechanism.
I can tell you that it wasn't that mechanism a couple years ago. I'm not sure now.
Okay, just curious.
Because when I was doing Java builds on the cluster, dealing with the Maven repository was a pain. I mean, well, you could walk around it. Basically, you created a persistent volume and all that good stuff. But obviously, if you have a managed repository on your cluster that you can populate and deal with that would solve a lot of pain for Java users on the cluster. However, that only, I mean, at least with my limited understanding at the moment, I'm not sure that really fits the needs of the Java operator SDK users, because presumably, well, I don't know. I mean, it's definitely good to know that it's an option.
Yeah, I just don't see what is the workflow, or in which workflow we as a team or we as a community who develops the Java operator SDK. I mean, I don't see where we can put this in the puzzle, or where should it fit. If somebody builds some libraries on top of a platform and Java artifacts wants to publish it just for the platform itself, I think this is the use case what Pulp solves. I'm not sure if it makes sense for us. I mean, we want to publish the things into Maven Central, so it's available for everyone. So I don't know if any of our customers, for example, build jars. So we are kind of primarily building images if somebody uses the SDK, and that is published to an image repository. I'm not sure if any team is publishing separately jar files to a repository at all, or it makes even sense to, if you are not building a library or some framework or something. Yeah.
Anyway, I can see that something that helps with the Maven repository management could be very useful in production, for people putting Java operators into production as part of like build pipeline assists, that kind of thing could be very useful. I still don't quite get how operate first fits into the puzzle, but I think that's just is that Red Hat essentially is umbrella for this work essentially?
It's they're just providing an environment for people to put these things as an incentive to harden these operators. That's my understanding. I'm not deeply involved with the project. So yeah, I kind of suspected that it wouldn't necessarily be any directly useful to anyone in this group, but if you think it is useful to y'all's users, feel free to let them know.
So at the beginning it said, would this group benefit from a Pulp Maven operator? Are they actually working on such a thing, or?
They just finished the Pulp Python operator. A Pulp Maven operator will probably be very similar. And they are looking for the next project, and Maven was on the list.
Okay.
Can I just So like the pulp Python, is that essentially maintain essentially like a something that pip can hit?
Yes,
For
exactly.
okay, and the operator part of that is it essentially like takes care of a lot of the administrative details of having a you know a repository for running on a cluster, right?
No, the operator does not actually set up any repositories. It sets up pulp, which creates the user then creates the repositories.
Oh,
So-
but it does it resolve it so you just have a CR file that explains what repository you'd like pulp to make for you, or something like that?
I don't think that's how it works. I haven't actually deployed it myself, but the way that I assume that it works is that your operator just literally installs pulp and pulp Python, and then the user is responsible for setting up the repo.
Yeah. Huh. Okay. I mean, the idea of I think it definitely would help harden, because you know that's the problem I think people face, is that Maven Central or any other public repo, that they worry about what's coming back to them in the build process. So yeah, I can see where it definitely has an important use case.
Yeah, and just to plug pulp for another minute, the repositories are now versioned, so you can always roll back. That's a big deal, in my opinion.
Oh, in other words, you can know exactly what was in the repository at a point in time.
Yes.
Nice. Yeah, all that stuff is, yeah, it's maybe not so important in dev, or like, you know, but I think in production, yes, all that stuff becomes quite important. So.
Well, cool. I'll let y'all know if that is the next one that they do.
Yeah, that would be cool.
And if they finish it, I'm going to try to get them to do a presentation as well.
That'd be cool too. Awesome. Well, today I learned something new about operate first and stuff, and I think those are the links, so I added them to the agenda. I can add them in chat as well if folks want them. This is the one of the repos, and then the website. Nope. You can't click with the thing over there, can you? There we go. All right. Anything else in the community wants to bring up? All right. Okay. Let's go ahead and already open those up. Just two. This one was opened a while ago. Oh, this is the problem he ran through the tutorial. Okay. Is Lucky here today?
Doesn't look like it.
Okay, well, I'll ping him later. Okay. Java FSDK. Let's see. Move these little black boxes out of the way for you. Are there any untriaged bugs in here, or anything that folks want to specifically call out?
Yeah, maybe just go through some issues if you don't mind. We can start with that.
Okay.
Oh.
Syncing event source on startup before event processing starts.
Yeah, just something that, so our plan is, I guess, Chris, if you agree that probably next week or in the coming days, we'll probably start the final basically process or steps to releasing V2. There was one issue that I discovered during some testing and implementing some end-to-end tests. So we are kind of lacking something that controller runtime has. This is called a syncing source in controller runtime. and there are the links and how this is implemented in Control Runtime. And it wasn't this wasn't a big deal for us because how the informers and everything implemented in the Kubernetes client, it naturally did not cause any issues. It just caused some issues with some event sources which are not really Kubernetes related. So this was an umbrella issue just to maybe introduce this wait for sync mechanism in Contra Runtime. But so at the end, for now, had a different, simpler approach, which mostly covers this, and we cover this in the even outside of Kubernetes, the event sources which is not operating over Kubernetes resources. So basically, just for the record, now it works. I think we are covering everything, just not explicitly having this notion of syncing source or syncing event source. But yeah. So in probably or in the future, we might also introduce this concept to have it nicely covered. Also for the other person, there's something to mention. If somebody wants to dig deeper on these problematics, why this is needed or something, just ping me. And this is a nice issue to implement in maybe v2.1, having the same concept of syncing sources also in our. For now, it's I created a pull request and implemented it in a simpler way, but it basically works and should work. Not that nice, but as the original thing.
Okay.
If you are interested more in depth, happy to talk about it, but something just to mention.
Okay.
I think we can go next. So there is a Sonar Cloud. I always miss Sonar on our project, and just happened that I accidentally hit this Sonar Cloud, which is free, I think, for a plugin for Git. It's a plugin for GitHub Actions, and it seems to be free. So I guess we will turn it on later and have a full Sonar support and covered everything. If you're not familiar with Sonar, it's before it was called Sonar Cube, I think, in the 10 years ago. It's a very old history, a tool with a very old history in Java. It's basically does an in-depth code analysis and analyzes the hell out of your code and basically every bug. So I guess we want this soon turned on to catch any bugs or anything.
So this would be to basically analyze this project and just kind of keep us honest and keep the code clean as well.
Yes,
Okay.
Exactly.
That's cool.
You get a lot of the static analysis processing is done by most people's IDEs, but yeah, Sonar, what used to be Sonar Cube, like gives you reports that come out of Sonar. It's better because it's generally available to a whole team, not just hidden in your IDE.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, I did
Update release action.
Yeah, I think I just checked it 2 minutes ago. I think we had this issue with this, Chris. In the beginning of the project, we intentionally did not choose this one action to release to Maven Central. I'm not sure you are here, Chris.
Yeah, I'm here.
But I might be wrong, and it actually might be updated for that time. But we had some serious issues with this standard releasing plugin. That's why we are, I think, using a different one. But yeah, we can try again using the standard.
Yeah, it's not urgent or anything. It's just I was wondering about it. I don't recall why that prompted me. I should have put more details on there, but basically, I think I was looking at the Quarkiverse release mechanism, and I think I came across that. But I mean, then again, if it's not broken, there might not need to change stuff. So definitely low priority.
Yeah. Yeah, if it's not broken, don't break it. I tend to do that. Usually, it happens to me when I'm working on the car and I'm like, oh, well, I'm in here. I should go do this. Well, probably shouldn't have. It was working. It was fine, but now I'm in a deeper hole. So, okay. Dependent resources support. Okay.
And that's kind of a summary of what I presented several times already. Of note, I'm rewriting the initial implementation that I did. So currently there are 2 pull requests open for this, because the initial pull request, we did quite a bit of work on the API in the meantime. And that's when I started trying to rebase the changes and stuff like that. I was like, okay, that's gonna be hell to do, because basically there were lots of conflicts. And also in the meantime, my thinking had evolved a little bit on how to implement things. So I decided to more or less redo it. Not quite from scratch, but yeah, the implementation is slightly different. So, and also it's more generic now. Basically, the current state of that pull request you just opened is that it's back to what the original pull request was in terms of functionality, I think. And the next step for that is to make the dependent resources also work for non-Kubernetes resources, because initially that was limited to Kubernetes resources. So basically, if your custom resource needed to create a deployment service, secret stuff like that, that would work. But if your if your controller needed to basically create a MySQL database or something like that, something external to the cluster, you couldn't do that. This new work is supposed to be able to do that. It doesn't at the moment, and that's the next step. And my next step on that is actually to rework the MySQL end-to-end test that we have in the sample operator, to see how that would work. And yeah, so I'd appreciate if people could give it a try and take a look at the code and things like that. It's not ready yet, but it's getting there. So maybe it's a little early to review still, but yeah.
Cool. So at this stage, the best thing folks could do is check out that PR and play with it and kind of check the ergonomics of it and stuff. And
yeah, mostly looking at the examples, like the template reconciler, the web app reconciler. Those are the 2 big ones. They've been reworked with the new dependent resource support. And so that gives a feel for how things would look like.
Okay.
Without going into the nitty-gritty details of how it's implemented.
Cool. Let's see, the resources, support for reactive programming model.
Yes. It's as someone earlier mentioned, this is the most liked to-do issue in the backlog, with the 7 likes and 3 rockets on it. But yeah, so the reactive, I don't know if everybody's aware of it. What is reactive programming. I think in the Go world, it's virtually non-existing problem because it uses coroutines instead to solve this problem. But so it's basically as running with one thread or a number of threads, which usually number of the processor cores, and the processing, and using this reactive way of implementing the code. So it spares the context switches and the memory what the thread by default takes. Usually it's, I think, 1 megabyte of memory under Linux. Linux when you create a thread, it's reserved for the stack. So if you create 100 threads, which is just sitting there for executor service, then it's 100 megabyte of memory. And basically it helps a better performance, both memory and processing wise, also related to processor time. But it's not easy to implement. It's not easy to implement the framework, and it's a little bit harder and a little bit more unusual in Java to implement reactive code than in some other languages like TypeScript or Rust, which has a more native async await keyword supports and other stuff to handle that. But I think this is something we would want to investigate for V3 or something in the future, and probably already started to dig deep into how it would look like with Vertex or some other Java framework. But maybe for now, just a preparation work, and I promise I will describe the issue. But if you have any input, we can discuss it, if it is a good idea or not a good idea for now, or when to schedule such a thing. But I think Luca was very positive about this, about having this in the operators, and it's basically very much makes sense for operators, I think, to have reactive programming model also supported in beside the current model. So it would be an additional way of, but yeah, it's more about hard work on the framework side, and not really about for the users. It will be then. No, okay. So basically, there is missing pieces also from in the client, in the Fabricate client. It's not supporting it. So there are lots of things to discuss related to this. But yeah, it's definitely something that it would benefit. The users will benefit from.
Okay.
So basically, like, go through everywhere and try and rework everything that's been done more imperatively, like rework everything into a reactive form.
Yes, some extent, but we are already not doing anything IO bound too much in the operator SDK. So I'm actually not sure if, other than the current executor service that we are using, this is actually that much work in some places. So it's definitely will be, but also we could have it as an alternative controller implementation, because we have now a kind of high-level aggregate, the core concept of controller, which implements everything. But we could just implement another async controller, which will be maybe just a different module, or to some extent. So again, it's a multiple ways to do this. I guess it's up to us how to approach it. But yes, essentially it will be a new implementation or a new major rework on some parts.
Yeah, because the core ideas are basically to remove anything that could be blocking the threads, so that any work, because right now, anytime you talk to the cluster, basically you're blocked. So that might happen in a different thread, but that thread, like Attila was saying, any thread that you create is some memory you need to use, and most of the time those threads sit there and doing nothing. So the reactive model is about optimizing basically your memory and CPH, and doing things in a non-blocking way, so that anytime, I mean, basically you don't have threads that are just sitting there waiting. And if you implement things nicely, you can get away with a lot of throughput without using many threads. But that comes with the price of, like, it's a different model for most Java developers. I mean, it's starting to get more mainstream, but for Java developers who are used to an imperative way of doing things, and basically you do operations sequentially, switching to an asynchronous model is a little bit kind of a paradigm shift. So the question is also to decide whether or not that's worth it, because it also depends on the type of operator you're writing, right? Some operators, I mean, obviously all the operators would benefit from being reactive in terms of resources consumption. But if that comes at the price of ease of use for developers, then that, I mean, basically it's a trade-off you have to be aware of. And if your operator is not handling a big load of requests, like if you basically your custom resources change maybe once or twice every couple of months, then the question of complexifying your development with a reactive code base for that kind of load is, I mean, that might be questionable. So it makes sense for some operators, for example, the managed Kafka one, where they have to handle a lot of requests, concurrent requests. Basically, it makes sense for high load operators. For simple ones, or rather the ones that are not necessarily being interacted with on a very frequent basis, the question is more, I mean, the benefits are more questionable, I would say. But yeah, it's a different way of thinking about things, and it could be interesting for users that have a lot of requests on their operators. And I'm actually wondering if the API server would handle a load, like basically what would be if the operator could overload the API server if it was too performant. I don't know.
I think it's more about how much in the reconcile implementation, how much APIs other than the API server you are calling. So it's or how much IO operation is doing other than the API server. It's not necessarily just the operators which communicate with the API server, or but some external services.
Do you go ahead, Brett?
Oh, I was just going to say, I think the more recent versions of Java have pretty good support for this. I don't know if they directly have support for Scala type stuff like features and promises, but there's definitely some more recent Java stuff that definitely has good support for this. And I was just going to say that it might be, I mean, it doesn't, I definitely think it adds complexity for somebody who's not already thinking that way for their operator development. But what would be nice is if it gradually maybe could be implemented for the things they depend on, so that if that's of interest to them, like making sure that they deal with like they don't block on cluster calls and things like that. At least at some point, the libraries that they're depending on might come into that mode of working, and it wouldn't actually have any effect on how they code, but it would at least be a possibility. And I think that stuff can really be done piecemeal. It doesn't have to be done all at once. It could just be done going forward. We'd like to do our new stuff like this, and we could gradually clean up old stuff too. I think it can be implemented. I do think it is a nice thing to head towards.
Yeah, I mean that it has some impact like semantically as well, because basically there are stuff that we do currently, like for example, updating the status for a custom resource. We could already be doing it asynchronously, but we don't. And yeah, that's a choice that was made. But it's little things like that. I mean, the semantics could be a little different as well as to what, as to how you interact with the cluster.
Do we have a milestone or anything that we could tag this? Because I do think this is not something that you would put in V2 or anytime.
No.
Well, I mean, yeah, V2 is probably going to be released next week, so
Right.
unless we get super power in the meantime, that's definitely not going to get into V2.
I guess, or maybe a next, like, here's some stuff, because some of this is stuff that isn't necessarily high priority that needs to get done now, but we don't want to lose the fact that we've been thinking of this stuff. So I didn't know if there was a label or a thing that, like, next. Here's some stuff in the future.
Should be a V3 milestone or maybe a next milestone, yeah. But I created a project for these big features. If you go scroll up, there are these projects.
Oh, okay.
And there is
okay. Oh no, crap! No, go back. Don't need to learn more.
And there is this roadmap, which kind of lists. I thought that it would be list the big features, not just some small issues. And there is this reactive, and there is the serverless support.
Okay.
Which is other, and just these big architectural changes. But yeah, I agree that the milestone should be there too.
Now, this is kind of what I was thinking. This suffices for what I was trying to approach. What I didn't want was the issue to kind of sit there and look like it's something that's going to happen immediately, but it is something that is more future thinking, and I think this kind of covers it. Awesome. Now that would actually be kind of a cool discussion to have, and like when that gets implemented, like what the best way to do it. And
yeah, and actually it's not that straightforward. I mean, Java itself has a support for this. There are features, and from Java 9 there are more abstractions around it, but still there are multiple frameworks, multiple libraries, and the frameworks does it, like Spring and Quarkus has their own reactive libraries and own. Spring has the reactor, and Mutiny is for Quarkus, and yeah, it's like multiple. Yeah, there is not unified API that much. There is something in the in depth, if I understand correctly, this flows from Java 9. But yeah, there is a long discussion probably even how to approach this exactly inside the core of the framework. So yeah, it will be fun.
I mean, this project doesn't have a lot of, I don't know. Maybe compared to the amount of people power we have, it does have some legacy. But with projects with much bigger legacy, I think they typically might implement side by side, library calls where you might have a reactive and a non-reactive version of the same thing. That's one possibility too.
Yeah,
but it creates a lot of extra stuff.
The biggest problem we are having now is that we are using lots of locking, like reentrant locks inside the core to manage the race conditions, and that's basically a no-go for a reactive framework. So I see they're the biggest problem that we are kind of implementing it with aware of the threats and lots of thread locking. I mean that would be. That will be a kind of a challenge to get everything out from the core. And I mean, Spring and Quarkus does it in a way that you can, for example, have the controller, which is reactive, and at the core, at the non-reactive controller too. Kind of, if you register a reconciler in our case, you could register a non-reactive, or you can register reactive controller. So intention is here not to replace the current approach. It's like, yeah, as you said, it's basically side by side, provide the implementation for both approaches.
Okay, native serverless operators.
Yeah, so this is something that I wrote a little blog post, how it would look like to have it as a serverless, these operators running, and not sure if somebody mentioned this or there I found some blog posts 2 years ago from IBM. It's somewhere referenced in here, that basically it's how it would look like to run an operator in a serverless mode, just for the use cases that Chris mentioned before, that if you have an operator which rarely receives an event, just shut down the operator and just start up, do the reconciliation, and start it again if you really need it. And this is just basically wanted to investigate how hard it would be to implement and how it would look like briefly with Knative, and all the problems and features with the concurrency and stuff like that. And the outcome is it's not that hard. It's even started to work on a little prototype to see the things, how it's done with Knative. But I'm again very reluctant if it's worth it. It's it maybe if you have 20 to 30 operators running and there's the use case, then it definitely might make sense. But on the other hand, probably the reactive would make more sense to spare some resources.
Yeah. No, that's cool. I'll have to read that blog post. But it's good to capture these type of things as we're thinking of them, and even if right now they don't seem like they'll pan out or be anything, but hey.
Yeah, I mean, in that blog post from the IBM site, it's somewhere there on the reference. They definitely claim that this will be needed, and they especially make this case with Knative that's very simple with Knative simpler with Knative to do than with native Kubernetes, and it's really positive, and they do some measurements in the blog post, and this I reference this and I just explore it more, that for our case how it would look like the implementation and what are the challenges with that. So it's more just to think about it, but again, I think we would need lots of people or users to say that, okay, we really want to do this before we actually jump into things like this. So that's it's more exotic to have have support for it, I would say.
This definitely sounds more like a feature that you would want to see the landscape where it's going. If users start to migrate or ask for this type of thing, then you want to get there. No, that makes sense. That's cool. We've got 12 minutes left, and I noticed on the agenda there was this topic here. I'm not quite sure what this was specifically about. Initial support. Oh, this is his PR that he mentioned earlier. Was there something specific? I mean, didn't you just talk about this with that other issue?
Yeah, but
okay.
That was kind of a call for action for the last meeting we had for people to look at the pull request and comment and basically give an opinion or anything. So I don't know if that's still up to date, or if it's. It should probably be looking at the newer PR though. So like, because this one is the previous implementation, I think the new one is 785. Yeah, and the link in the document is linking to the older one, 726. So I'm not sure why we reference that specific file, but it's the whole PR basically.
I had just copied the link from that file when you were showing it last time. That's all. I don't think it was anything specific with that file.
Okay. Cool. I updated the link, and I just didn't want to like skip over that. But now that so we can go back to the other issue. I think we were past. We just did Knative, right? Server-side apply. Is this supporting server-side apply in the SDK?
Yes.
Okay.
But it's not supported for now by the client. So
Okay.
until it's not supported, maybe we can we'll take a look on the client and then in the SDK. So that's if.
So it's technically blocked by.
Yes, blocked by client.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. We'll see if might implement it in there and then here.
E2E test for sample operators.
Okay, this is actually good. I implemented the end-to-end tests also now this week for MySQL and operator, and now it fully works and everything. I'm not sure if you need it from the web page. It might be nice. Just web page. Yeah, I guess it makes sense also first. So we have these 3 sample operators, which are really, we would like to have it as a production-like example or showcasing the features and having a very close to real-life samples. And then we implemented end-to-end tests for 2, which are really doing like building it, creating the image, deploying into the cluster, into a kind cluster, and making some tests in the end if everything is running correctly, creating some custom resources. So yeah, that and it's missing just for the 3rd one, the web page, which is the simplest one actually. So we'll probably do that next weekend, and then we can close this issue.
Cool. I like that. This one says need discussion.
We already did work on this. Chris, you also, I saw your pull request today. Tomorrow we'll take a look. Again, there is a little bit changed. So the problem is that we are in the reconciler, we initializing the event sources, the informers basically, usually. And it's a little bit what was coupled. We extracted it since to a separate interface, and it looks much nicer now. It's much more decoupled. The idea was to decouple it completely in a different way, but that would be anyway have some side effects and some negative points. So for now, it's as it is. I think this is a good compromise what we have now. At the end, I think, to be honest, I would just close this issue, or I don't know, see after we release V2, we can still check with the guy, with Hesuk.
I'll go through it again, but I think we can probably close that at this point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think too. So again, what is proposed here in this issue to completely extract it and doing this registration when we are registering the reconciler, that would have some not nice side effects.
So we technically, we didn't do it verbatim, but we did address some of the asks from this issue in V2, is what I'm hearing.
Yes,
Okay.
definitely. Actually had multiple iterations and improvements on it. So I think it's quite nice now.
Okay, I can actually comment and then close it, and I'll do that later.
Okay.
I'll find the stuff in V2 and kind of use that as a commentary or to create my comment. Cool. Let's see, is there anything else on the agenda folks wanted? Okay, we've got 5 minutes left. We want to take another issue, or is there something else on what we wanted to talk about? Ooh, this is an easy one. Simplify the GitHub landing page.
I had the feeling that we have lots of information on the landing page, why we are now have a better web page. And I would rather move it and just have the basic information on the project, on the readmes, on the landing page or on the GitHub repository. I like this project, which has this simple introduction and some maybe some basic sample of how it looks like, and that's it.
You mean here?
Yes, and all the other information in the web page. That since we already have it.
Oh, I see. So you're advocating to simplify this page to have more links to the proper documentation and maybe just give intro information here. That makes sense.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think when I come to a README, the things that I like to see or want to see as a, looking for information is, how do I contact you? Where your documentation is, and then contribution guide. Like, how do I contribute to your project? Maybe a blurb about, okay, what is this project? So just at least enough to give me a sense of, oh, I kind of, that's cool. Let me keep digging. And you don't want it so terse where it's like, well, I have no idea what they said. Okay, well now whatever. I don't want to keep looking. If it's too hard to find information, I don't want to look. You have to find that happy balance. But I can agree with that. Where was that? What did I do with it? Don't know how I got lost, but is this being worked on?
Not yet.
Okay.
I'm currently working in a documentation, a web page, and somebody reported that also that it doesn't work on the mobile. I just if you open our web page, it's mainly just filling the content, not the design itself. We might want to have a better design in the web page too, eventually.
I don't know what this is.
If you go to the this is no, nothing.
No, I clicked on this mention. Oh, that's a bot.
Yeah, it's for the internal team.
Okay.
Some kind of.
Cool. Okay. Well, I think that's we can call that for issues. What was the last one that we just looked at? 714. Okay. Next one is 712. Okay. Is there anything else anyone wanted to bring up in the last 2 minutes? All right. If you do have time, please play around with and look at Christoph's PR. I think it was 758. Feel free to ask questions on that. And with that, thanks everyone. Give you a minute. Let's see, I saw something in chat maybe. Oh no, that was a comment to the simple readme. Awesome. All right, folks. Well, with that, thank you very much for your time today, and Happy New Year.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Happy New Year.
Best wishes. Happy New Year. Bye.